It is time to watch a horror movie again. Today, the story continues with the American horror series, Grave Encounters. In a desolate mountain in America, there is an asylum. It covers 80,000 square meters and once admitted hundreds of thousands of mental patients. Sometimes, the doctors are too busy to handle them all, and they even refuse to admit new patients. Now, it is deserted and dilapidated. The reason is that a surgeon who graduated from Harvard University, after becoming the director of this hospital, conducts inhumane brain research on the patients. During his 11 years in office, he removes the frontal lobes of over 200 patients. His frontal lobe, located at the very front of the human brain, has functions for regulating emotions, language expression, and motor control. The director, named Friedkin, is a neurology expert. He has an extreme, perverse obsession with brains, so he uses his position to crack open the patient's cranium. He cracks open hundreds of heads. Until August 15, 1948, all of this finally stops. 6 patients escape from their confinement rooms. While Friedkin is taking a nap in his office, they eliminate him with a dagger. Afterward, this hospital begins to experience strange occurrences. Patients seeking treatment also stay away. In 1974, the government attempts to renovate the hospital. However, during construction, paranormal events constantly occur. Even one worker is suddenly attacked by a force, and after it pushes him down the stairs, he breaks his leg. The security guard who works here also reveals that many places inside the building have experienced supernatural events. For example, the guard repeatedly confirms that he locks this door on the top floor before leaving work at a time. However, by the next day, this door always opens automatically, which is very strange, and the bathtub in front of them always produces a dripping sound of water every time it gets dark. It is said that a woman succumbed while bathing here before. Finally, there is the tunnel on the first basement level. It is 2 kilometers long and connects to all the buildings in the courtyard. However, every time the old man comes down, he feels a bone-chilling cold inside. He also says that many pairs of eyes are constantly staring at him. Every time the old man comes to inspect, he only dares to look from the tunnel entrance and does not dare go deeper.
What?
It's just my shadow.
After interviewing the key figures, Lance leads his exploration program team and decides to stay in this building from 10 p.m. tonight until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning to see if they can film any supernatural events. To record more details, Lance arranges for Matt to install cameras in the rooms where supernatural events have occurred. Matt needs to be in front of the big screen, constantly observing the movements inside the building, and he finds a problem. He immediately notifies the other 4 people via radio. Immediately after, Lance leads his team members into the interior of the building. However, the further they go inside, the more humid the environment in the building becomes. Various decaying smells also fill the air. Because this hospital, to prevent patients from escaping, installed iron bars on every window and blocked there with wooden boards. Almost no sunlight reaches inside the building year-round. Female team member Sasha cannot help but exclaim that it is too cold there. Then he starts calling out the names of ghosts. He lies down in the bathtub where someone once succumbed, but he waits a long time for them to reveal themselves. Lance also takes out the instant camera he carries with him. According to him, this camera can capture things invisible to the naked eye. Moreover, ghosts usually stealthily appear behind people. If he captures someone truly behind them, they can only know the result after the photos develop. However, Lance takes several photos in a row but finds nothing unusual. At this moment, the group arrives at the underground tunnel. Because while taking photos earlier, Houston says he hears some sounds coming from below. However, when they follow the sounds and get closer, they find a group of squeaking rats inside. Afterward, Lance and the others have no choice but to return to the camp to rest along the way. At this time, less than 4 hours remain until the end of filming. To prevent the show from being ruined, Lance plans for the 4 of them to split up and film later. This way, the probability of capturing supernatural footage also increases. However, at the same time, in one of the places where they installed surveillance cameras, the door meant by the old man during the day suddenly quietly opens. Meanwhile, Lance and his group have already arrived upstairs. After explaining some details about the upcoming filming, the few people begin to act separately. Perhaps it is because the spirits fear crowds. Shortly after, a TC member leaves the group. He stumbles into a shower room. 1 second he is still complaining how cold it is tonight. Suddenly, the door behind him slams shut on its own.
What the fuck was that?
TC is startled at first. After confirming no one is around, he quickly calls Lance and his team via radio. Lance is also a bit skeptical at first. He asks if the wind might have caused it. TC refutes, explaining that even if wind blows in, the door's weight makes it impossible to move. Afterward, the group watches the video TC filmed. They finally believe him and become excited. After Lance briefly explains to the audience via the camera, he begins to conduct a séance in front of the door, attempting to make the ghost display its power again to enhance his show's content. Just then, a loud bang suddenly comes from a nearby room.
Fuck. I thought we were actually gonna have something here.
What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?
Jesus Christ.
Lance quickly tells his team to leave the shower room and go to the hallway. They cautiously approach the room where the sound came from. When the group arrives, they discover that a gurney with wheels has been pushed over. Its wheels are still spinning rapidly. This suggests the entity possesses considerable strength. Lance asks Matt, who is monitoring from the screen, via radio, but Matt states there are no other personnel in the entire building. And everything is normal. Sasha speculates they must have encountered a paranormal phenomenon. She strikes while the iron is hot. She quickly takes out a recorder called EVP. According to their explanation, this machine can not only record human voices but also sounds that human AI cannot hear. After Sasha records the sound, she starts playing it on a loop. At this moment, the recorder emits a beeping sound. It sounds like a telegraph machine is operating. As everyone focuses their attention on listening, Sasha's hair inexplicably floats in the air. It is obvious that an invisible person pulls her from behind. After this incident, Sasha feels somewhat distraught. She hides in the stairwell and argues with Lance, wanting to go home and end the day. However, at this critical juncture, Lance cannot possibly give up filming. He first has Houston take Sasha back to the camp on the first floor to rest for a while. Then, they return to the previous spot to continue their spiritual communication. TC is responsible for filming and recording from the opposite side. But after yelling like a madman for a long time, there is still no response. It is now 4:40 a.m. There is less than 2 hours until the security guard arrives to open the door. TC urges Lance to call it a day, because he has another audition for a role in the afternoon and cannot waste time here working overtime. There is nothing he can do. Lance reluctantly takes a few photos and leaves.
So let's go home, man.
Afterward, everyone starts packing their personal belongings in the lobby. Matt is assigned to go upstairs and retrieve the camera, because only he knows the exact location of the camera. But TC in the crowd is clearly agitated and restless. It turns out it is already 6:15 a.m. The old man has not come to open the door and is exactly 15 minutes late. Amidst TC's continuous complaints, more than 1 hour passes. Now, not only has the old man not arrived, but Matt, who went upstairs to get the camera, is also nowhere to seen. They believe Matt must have encountered some difficulty. So they have Houston wait for the old man on the first floor. The other three go upstairs to search for Matt. Just as TC passes a staircase, he is suddenly pushed violently down by a force.
Matt?
After this incident, TC can no longer tolerate it. Now, whether the old man comes to open the door or not, he wants to leave, so he pushes a bed out of the room. He calls Lance to help him ram the door, and they break it open. But it is now almost 8 a.m. Yet no sunlight shines in from outside. TC also steps back in disbelief, because what they see at this moment is not the view outside the building. Instead, it is the entrance they used yesterday to enter this building, which is pitch black. Houston also picks up from the ground the chain the old man used to lock the door. Then, looking at the words written on the door is still the original door. Only the exit has become somewhat different. Subsequently, Lance and the others open one compartment after another. They discover that the layout inside is exactly the same as what they saw before. Even the opening and closing angles of the doors are identical. TC angrily crashes into the window. Finding it completely unmovable, he yells out the window again, but still no one responds. At this moment, Houston, who has researched supernatural events, explains, perhaps these buildings have some kind of magnetic field that can confuse time. Perhaps they have only been inside the building for less than 3 hours. This also explains why the timer shows 8 a.m. but the sun is still not visible outside. After a pointless argument, they decide to check the top floor. If a fire escape is installed there, then they can leave the building using the ladder. The 5 people are full of anticipation, climbing one flight of stairs after another. Ter seen a sign with a rooftop slogan. TC excitedly shouts. However, after turning this corner, what appear before them is a reinforced concrete wall. TC desperately slaps the wall a few times and can only descend the stairs with tears in his eyes. But immediately, the group encounters another tricky problem.
他们迷路了。
Looking at the map in the corridor, Lance always feels that they seem to have seen the buildings they just passed many times. Moreover, the compass in Sasha's hand also malfunctions and can no longer distinguish directions. Just then, a figure suddenly flashes behind them. Lance believes it is the long-lost Matt. When he quickly leads everyone to the end, they discover a strange woman standing in the corner with he back to them.
Hey. Who are you? How come you're in here?
Seeing this scene, the group awkwardly flees the room. They quickly hide, but in the panic, Houston, who runs at the back, gets separated from the main group. He constantly calls out Lance and the others' names in the corridor. But what answers him is the creaking sound of the slowly opening door ahead. Houston remains unaware that something has already exited the room. He continues to shout loudly and recklessly in the corridor. In an instant, something lifts him high and suppresses his throat. At this point, Lance and the others have been trapped in the building for almost 2 days and 1 night. Unable to resist, everyone falls asleep. When Sasha wakes up, she feels a sharp pain in her back. Lance slowly lifts her shirt, only to discover that many English letters are carved onto Sasha's back. Not only that, but all 3 of them also have wristbands on their hands. These are tags typically worn by psychiatric patients. However, their names are now written on the wristbands. Afterward, in one of the rooms, they find Matt, who has been missing for a long time. However, his mental state appears to be unstable. He also wears the same patient uniform as psychiatric patients. Lance asks Matt what he has seen, but TC does not want to dwell on these details. He only wants to quickly find an exit and go home to see his wife. At this moment, Matt replies that they can, of course, leave. However, before they leave, everyone must undergo a craniotomy at the hospital. After speaking, Matt begins to laugh loudly. Unconsciously, he stands in front of a bathtub. He stares intently at the pool of bloody water inside. He hears that people died inside before. TC tells Matt to stay away from the bathtub and tries to pull him over. When all the bloody water gushes out of the bathtub, TC, who was dragged in, disappears without a trace. Instead, Matt stares at everything in the room and bursts into laughter. Not long after, the 3 people, who continue to look for an exit, finally find an elevator. They are trapped on this floor and cannot get out. Lance thinks of climbing down the elevator shaft. Perhaps there is still a glimmer of hope. When they climb to the basement floor and enter that underground tunnel, perhaps they can leave the entire building. After saying this, Lance finds a handy steel pipe to pry open the elevator door. As he is about to leave the room, he discovers a severed tongue on the ground. The blood is bright red, and it seems it was just severed recently. Lance does not expect a dead mental patient to be hanging above his head. He frantically runs to the elevator and pries open the door. Fortunately, there is a ladder nearby that can be used for climbing. Lance tells Sasha to go down first, then Matt second, and he himself brings up the rear. Just as he finishes giving instructions, the evil spirit lets out a roar and rushes towards the crowd. Lance also picks up the camera and walks forward. There is a door not far from him that can be used to block the evil spirit.
There it is.
Seeing Lance in trouble, Sasha hands the camera to Matt and rushes to help. Yelling, with their combined efforts, the evil spirit is successfully blocked outside the door. When the camera shifts to Matt behind them, he laughs eerily again, then jumps down from the adjacent elevator shaft. After Lance and Sasha climb down the ladder, they find Matt motionless and already dead. Now, only 2 of the 5-member exploration team remain. Lance comforts Sasha while prying open the elevator door, saying that the tunnel is right in front of them, and as long as they can safely pass through here, they can leave this haunted building. However, looking at the bottomless dark opening, Lance does not know what kind of monsters they will encounter next. Walking for a while, terrified, Lance finds that they have returned to the tunnel entrance again, constant circling in place. He angrily throws away the steel pipe, completely losing hope. At this moment, Sasha also starts coughing violently and spits out a large amount of hemorrhage. Because she had suddenly developed a high fever before, and she has not eaten for too long, so her body can no longer hold on. Lance can only help her lean against the wall to rest for a while. Soon, a thick smoke silently spreads from the tunnel, covering them, and when the smoke dissipates again, Lance finds that Sasha next to him has disappeared. He uses that special recorder to try to communicate with the evil spirits, asking them what they really want. But the answer Lance receives is an eerie laugh. He is almost desperate and starving to madness, and he starts cursing at the camera.
Fuck you. Fuck you guys!
After beating the rat to death, Lance impatiently pounces on it and bites wildly. To supplement more high-quality protein, he even swallows all the internal organs. He laughs wildly as he eats, seeming to have become a mental patient. Immediately after, he sees an iron door appear around a corner. Lance pushes the door open and walks inside. Inside, it is filled with all sorts of miscellaneous items, all of which are tools used for surgery. A structural diagram of the brain is drawn on the blackboard. Next to it hang many patients who previously had their brains removed. Presumably, this is the laboratory the director previously used for surgeries.
Jesus Christ. What is all that? It's impossible. Shit.
At the end of the story, Lance lies in front of the camera, his forehead covered in blood. He appears to have undergone a forced frontal lobotomy.
No, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. No, 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 no. Ah!
Anh ấy nói rằng giờ anh ấy cảm thấy khỏe hơn nhiều và cuối cùng cũng có thể về nhà.
You could finally go home.
Anh ta nói rằng đây là gây en cao và anh ta là Lance.